The first key clue came from the reports of the F-16 pilots.
Soon after, a series of new details started to emerge from the observations of the two F-16 pilots.
The F-16 pilots had seen that all passengers on board were wearing their oxygen masks before the crash. This fact was confirmed by the Athens chief coroner.
The impact of the crash was terrible, but many passengers were still wearing oxygen masks on their faces. This means the masks were deployed and they used them, or at least they tried to use them.
The deployment of the oxygen masks meant one thing. Helios 522 must have experienced a major loss of oxygen and cabin pressure during its fateful last flight. Modern planes fly at altitudes where the air is thin and oxygen levels too low to sustain human life. So each plane is sealed before takeoff and then pressurized during flight to create a safe artificial environment. Passengers breathe pressurized air that's the equivalent of being at 8,000 feet, even when the plane is actually flying at over 30,000 feet. If the cabin depressurizes, then oxygen masks are released immediately. The autopsies of the charred bodies led the coroner to a grisly conclusion.
I am certain they didn't die from asphyxiation, because their hearts and lungs were still functioning at the time of death. In other words, none of the passengers died before the crash.
The cause of death was now established as the impact from the crash. But that didn't answer the key questions. Why did the Helios plane lose cabin pressure? And why did this cause the plane to crash? Then, a breakthrough. Amid the debris, the flight recorder of Helios 522 was found. It was now possible for the investigators to draw up a basic timeline for the accident. According to the flight recorder, Helios 522 took off as scheduled at 0906 hours. Straight after takeoff, the autopilot was engaged for the preset route to Athens. The plane climbed at 3,000 feet per minute. At 7,000 feet, a warning light was triggered indicating a problem with the cooling system. At 10,000 feet came the next indication of a problem. The flight recorder noted a warning horn in the cockpit. This indicated a loss of cabin pressure. At 14,000 feet, a further alert was triggered and the oxygen masks were deployed. Yet the plane continued its journey, climbing until it reached its cruising altitude of 34,000 feet. There it remained in autopilot for over 2 hours. Then, at 11:50, the autopilot was disengaged and the plane is flown manually. Just minutes later, the aircraft ran out of fuel. Both engines stopped, and shortly after 12 o'clock, the plane crashed. It begged the question, with so many alarms and warning lights going off in the cockpit, why did the pilots continue the journey? Was this crash caused by a fatal pilot error? Stories began circulating in the Greek press, blaming the pilot and co-pilot. It was alleged that the co-pilot, Pambos Charalambos, was unhappy, distracted from his duties by personal problems. But this was not how his colleagues remembered him.
Pambos was, as we say, a really nice guy. He was a joy to be around, during work and after work.
Other news stories queried the pilot's health. It was claimed that the co-pilot had a heart problem and that this might explain why he seemed unable to function properly.
They said on TV that the pilots had problems. Who is going to believe that?
He was tested regularly. Pilots have health checkups every 6 months. He had his last test in April and everything was fine.
Who are they trying to fool?
There were also rumours about the co-pilot's incompetence, but these seem at odds with his professional background. He had almost 2 decades' experience of flying. At one time, he even studied aircraft engineering in England.
Planes were his first family, his priority. From an early age, he had a passion for mechanics. He even spent 3 years in Brighton, studying aircraft mechanics.
He was waiting for his promotion to become captain. He had accumulated all the necessary hours and day by day he was getting closer to this goal.
Whenever you have an accident like this one, and the crew is dead, the blame always falls on the crew. It is the standard answer to all accidents around the world.
For independent air safety expert Kim O'Neill, pilot error is too convenient an explanation. Kim is going to try to piece together the evidence and find out what caused the crash of Helios 522. There is one obvious place for him to start, with the plane itself. The Helios plane was a Boeing 737, the most widely used passenger jet in the world today. An airliner with an excellent safety record. Kim begins his research by investigating the safety record of the actual plane that crashed. Flight 522 was a modern, up-to-date aircraft built only in 1998. But it already had its fair share of technical problems, as the co-pilot's mother remembers.
My son didn't have any complaints about the company. However, he did tell me a few times that the plane had problems.
Petros Theocharidis is an investigative journalist in the Cypriot capital Nicosia. He also looked into the safety record of the plane, and it quickly emerged that this was not the first time there had been a potentially catastrophic loss of pressure on this plane.
I had written about the pressurization problem that occurred last December during a flight to Warsaw. The plane had a pressurization problem, the masks dropped down, and an emergency descent was necessary.
Intrigued by these newspaper reports, Kim takes a closer look at the maintenance records of Flight 522. He focuses on the plane's air conditioning system, the system that helps pressurize the aircraft.
It's quite remarkable, actually. The air conditioning system of this aircraft was repaired 5 times before the crash. Passengers frequently complained that the aircraft was very cold. The plane had a final maintenance check shortly before takeoff.
It seems this is where the blame might lie. A maintenance engineer admitted to the Greek investigators that he may have left the pressurization switch in the cockpit in manual rather than in automatic.
This mistake means that the aircraft could have taken off completely unpressurized. It's a vital piece of information.
To understand the implications of this, Kim travels to Stansted to talk to an aircraft engineer. All commercial planes use the air conditioning system to pressurize the air in the cabin.
So, can you tell me how the air conditioning system works in the aircraft?
Certainly. All the air enters the engine in the intake here. That is bled off the engine and passed through pipework through the wing and to the air conditioning packs which sit underneath the aeroplane.
Underneath the aircraft.
The air conditioning packs regulate the temperature of the air going into the cabin. When the correct temperature is obtained, the air then leaves the plane from a valve at the rear. It is this simple procedure that pressurizes the cabin.
So this is where the outflow valve is?
Certainly. The outflow valve is here at the rear of the aeroplane.
Okay.
And that's where all the air from the cabin is exhausted overboard.
Closing this valve ensures that the plane pressurizes. Leave it open and it remains unpressurized.
It's a very simple mechanical system. Open, shut.
Absolutely.
Yet ultimately, control of the cabin pressure lies with the pilots. The pressure of the plane is operated by a simple switch in the cockpit. It's usually set to automatic, but it can be operated manually.